Let's go. Hey. Wrightsville chillin', we vibe. Sip a cold one on Palm Tree Island. When the tide come in, gotta love it. Putting money in the meter, paddle boarding. Yeah, hands up if you.
Welcome back to the Palm Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Vandenberg, and today we are going to talk to Kerri Allen of the NC Coastal Federation. How are you?
Not too bad. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. The temperature has dropped.
Far too cold.
Far too cold. I'm sure it'll be probably 87 degrees by 8 a.m., given our local weather. So tell me a little bit about the Coastal Federation. The thing that kind of strikes me about it is you guys are this organization that's been around since the 80s that actually have a really tremendous impact on our area here in Wilmington and Wrightsville Beach. But I think if I pick somebody off the street, they would have no idea who you guys are. So kind of let me know why people should know about the Federation.
Absolutely. We definitely work a little bit more behind the scenes, and essentially we work to protect and restore the coast. So we were founded in 1982. Todd Miller, our executive director, started the organization out of his garage. And since then, we've grown to 3 offices up and down the coast with over 40 staff. And so our really goal is to bring everyone to the table when it comes to decisions that affect our coast. Our work focuses on water quality, on living shorelines, on oysters, on marine debris, and on coastal management. And we really work to make sure that everyone's voice is represented because the coast belongs to us all.
So there's a couple really interesting things I want to touch on with that, but let people take for granted water quality, right? Like, listen, I'm going to jump on my paddleboard, I'm going to go have a good time, I'm going to go swim in the ocean, but our water quality is a huge part of that most people don't think about. Kind of address that a little bit. What are the things I should know as someone who's around Wrightsville Beach?
Water quality really affects every facet of our life. I'm so fortunate working in Wrightsville Beach and growing up here in Wilmington. I am in the ocean pretty much every day of my life, whether it's swimming or surfing or on an outrigger canoe. And I think a lot of us take that for granted, and it's a privilege to be able to do so. But here in southeastern North Carolina, our coastal water quality is definitely under threat, and it takes a tremendous amount of work to keep our coastal waters open. Stormwater runoff is actually the #1 pollutant of surface waters in our state. And so that's from everything from a parking lot to roofs to new development. And we need all those things. We need development. We need hospitals and schools and roads. But just figuring out how to balance that development with the need to let rainwater infiltrate into the ground. So, nature has this great self-cleaning system set up where it rains, and the rain will pick up pollutants off the surface. It might be oil or, bacteria or whatever it is. But as that rainwater goes into the ground cleans it all by itself, and the circle of water goes on. So when you disrupt that and you keep that water from being able to infiltrate into the ground, instead it just runs off into our coastal waters. So it runs off into Banks Channel and the intercoastal and the ocean. And so we really try to work with anyone we can to do retrofit projects. So we design what we call nature-based stormwater solutions, things that help connect that cycle of rainwater back into the ground. So it might be something as simple as putting in curb cuts or pervious pavement or a French drain system so that that water can be cleaned again. And these are very cost effective. They provide great tax breaks, and they're something that we can all do to really help keep those coastal waters clean.
Okay, so yeah, it's basically like we're skipping the big filtering part that nature was doing for us, right?
Exactly. The technology is already there.
The technology it predates us. It kind of reminds me, and we'll jump to oysters in a bit, but like oysters, it's kind of that same situation, right?
Exactly.
Filtration and, at Cape Fear Community College, the chemical engineering program, they our chemical technology, they do all these different experiments. And one of the ones they do with a micrometer, I know, Tracy, you're going to get mad at me if I don't have that right, but they took a bunch of different oysters from all different areas, and then how much plastics and fuel and what's all in there was pretty fascinating to me.
Which is why we need clean water, so we can keep eating those oysters.
That's right. Timely, after the storm the other night, I mean, talk about what it did to the beach.
And that's something, I think there's a definite disconnect with so many people moving into this area. Growing up, it was pretty common sense for most of us that you didn't swim in Soundside waters for a few days after a major storm. It's called the first flush for a reason. That first 2 to 4 inches is flushing everything off the landscape and into that water. And nowadays, that's not common knowledge. People who aren't from the coast, why would they know that? Why would they know not to? And so we have all that junk in the water right now. And I think when people especially realize the economic impact it has just on tourism alone, I think it was maybe 1 or 2 years ago, one of the local triathlons had to be canceled because of poor water quality, because of a storm that came through a few days prior. There was thousands of people who were in town here at Wrightsville Beach to swim, and a canceled event because of a storm, because of stormwater. And so I think kind of realizing that connectivity is really important. And, it's easy after a hurricane to know that everything is coming down the river and affecting our water quality, but it's daily with any type of storm we have.
Right. You always think about mostly like the Cape Fear River and the major storms, right? We all think about the hog farms and all that fun stuff. But you're right, like even just your general day-to-day. And that was a pretty good storm the other day, too.
Oh, yes. I will not be going in those waters for a few days, even with my wetsuit.
Right, but that's, it's funny. Like you said, like, why would you know that, though, if you came from out of town? You just got down here, you just left somewhere. Let's just say, I'm always picking on them, the Midwest. You just left the Midwest and you're like, this big, beautiful blue ocean, baby, I'm jumping in.
Right after Hurricane Florence, unfortunately, the state, their labs were damaged, so they weren't able to do the water quality testing and issue advisories. And we were at the beach and seeing people swim and trying to talk to people. So we did our own sampling tests and at least shared them with the media to just try to get the word out that, hey, you shouldn't be in the water. And even Oceanside, after a storm like that, there was a very nice family out there swimming, and I'm using rubber gloves to collect a vial of water. And the mom is coming asking me if they should be swimming, and I said, well, I'm using gloves to put my hand in the water.
That would be a great photo bomb right there, right? Like these two things should not be
I am not a public health official, but I would err on the side of caution and say no.
Thick gloves on. One of the other interesting things is your guys' work with oysters, and I was kind of grazing over the 50 million oysters.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Oysters are the literal rock stars of the ocean. We are so lucky to have them, and not only because they are delicious. A single oyster can filter 50 gallons of water in one day. You can have over 300 different species of organisms living in a single reef. They act as a nutrient sink for nitrogen and phosphorus. They help protect against erosion. They attenuate wave energy. They're buffers. They're habitats, for all of the commercially important seafood species. I think 80% of every commercial seafood species we eat spends part of its life in that marsh oyster reef area. And then there's the direct harvest from the oysters themselves. Mm-hmm. So literally cannot say enough good things about oysters. And unfortunately, in North Carolina, our levels are probably about 10% of historic levels, what they were at the turn of the century, of 1900 century. And so
as far as overall population, we are
10%
10% of what we were.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And that's because of overfishing and water quality and development. So we've really been working to get as many oysters in the water as we can. So the 50 Million Oyster Initiative was a huge success up a little bit farther north from here. But to really be strategic when you think about how large an area we have and where we're putting these reefs, and really trying to make sure we're putting them in the best area. Where can they thrive the most? So we're able to work with all the researchers at UNCW. My graduate research was all on oyster reef and hydrodynamics and maximizing oysters for water quality remediation.
Any Fred Scharf in there?
Oh, yes.
Some Scharf? All right. Shout out to Fred
Fantastic.
Scharf.
And so we're able to benefit, from that partnership. And one of the best things about oysters, and things that we can all do, well, first of all, eating oysters is the best thing you can do to support them. So eat local oysters, ask where they're from, and then recycle your shells. So oysters, when they're a little larvae about the size of your pinky nail floating around in the water, they have to find something hard to attach to. Once they do, they stay on that forever. They're sessile, so they don't move. And so they prefer other oyster shells. they know that those settings are good for oysters, has the right chemical cues. And so by taking our shells and recycling them, we can then, we have drop-off spots all over the county. We can then take those shells, build reefs with them. So by eating oysters, you are literally saving the oceans.
All right, you're going to have to forgive my ignorance on this next one, but I think I may have just connected a dot. Several years ago, it was common to see people with like oyster shell driveways or all that stuff, and then suddenly it was like, you can't do that anymore. This is why. Like, so help us understand. There's a reason.
The shells are too valuable. They are beautiful. Do not get me wrong. I have plenty of shell artwork in my home, but the shells really are just too valuable. You can't just go to the store and buy them.
Sure.
They're a finite resource. And in North Carolina, a number of years ago, there was actually legislation passed that we helped get passed that made throwing away oyster shells illegal. And we actually had one of the premier oyster shell recycling programs in the country. And probably about 5 years ago, unfortunately, the state lost funding to maintain that program. And so we've kind of stepped in where we can to set up recycling centers and drop-off spots so that if you have an oyster roast, you can go drop your shells off. That is one misconception. A lot of people think that just throwing them back in the water is recycling, which, it's better than throwing them away.
Sure.
But they're not going to form a reef right there. So actually taking them to the recycling drop-off so that we can build a physical reef, whether it be with, other rocks or mesh bags in an area where we know oysters will grow.
Okay, so that seems like a pretty doable small thing right there. Just real quick tip, where in Wrightsville do I go to bring my oysters?
There's one right on Wrightsville Beach, Seawater Lane. So around the corner from our office, there's a big yellow dumpster. Has oyster shell recycling on the front, kind of near the the park area, tucked in there. There's also one at Carolina Beach State Park. There's one up in Hampstead. So if you go to nccoast.org/oysters, we have a map of all the locations.
All right, fantastic. Okay. Water quality, oysters, the living shoreline. Is the living shoreline something that applies here, or is that,
Definitely.
What is that about?
And we actually use oysters a lot in living shorelines too. Okay. And that's one thing too with oysters, just supporting as many local oyster growers as you can. We work a lot with the shellfish growers around here to grow the industry. One of the growers that we work with likes to say, I'm not an oyster farmer, I'm a clean water salesman. And, because of just the winds of oysters, we have great bipartisan support for these initiatives. You have we're looking at building a $30 million annual economy around oyster growing. We've already exceeded that. We've now upped the goal to $100 million annually by 2030. And so by doing that, you're also cleaning the water. So with oysters, make sure you're going to local restaurants and ordering local oysters. And then we will use them in living shorelines. So living shorelines, essentially, if you drive around Wrightsville Beach and you're on the sound side, you see a lot of bulkheads, a lot of those wooden seawalls, where people have their docks. We really prefer to see a more natural shoreline. So grasses, oysters, rocks, sills, and it's for a few reasons. The primary one is that it really protects the shoreline better from erosion. Once that wall is built, there's going to continue to be scour, continue to be erosion, and you've lost all that habitat. So with living shorelines, it actually extends the shoreline, protects against erosion. They outperform bulkheads during storms. If you think about it, if during a storm, water gets behind that bulkhead, it'll blow it out. Where if it comes up over the marsh.
This is kind of an easy sell, right? Like usually it's, hey, I know you want me to use the plastic straw, but I love my straw. This is like, no, it actually will protect better, you're saying then.
And it costs less.
Okay.
Like less than half the price. And it's prettier, it's better to look at than a wall, and you have great habitat. So anyone who has, coastal sound, front property is something to look at.
Yeah, there's a lot of pros in that column there to check for sure.
Definitely.
A lot of times with any of those kind of efforts, sometimes it's much more expensive or harder to get to, but that seems like a no-brainer.
It's another one of those nature-based solutions that we're trying to make the rule, not the exception.
Solutions. Listen to that.
It's like Mother Nature knows what she's doing.
Shout out, by the way, to friend of the show, Anna Shellum. Big fans of her.
Yes.
Big fans. Hope she's out there having fun. What do you guys need? I mean, obviously, there's always financial support, and I know that's a big one. If you had kind of your daydream that you said, all right, here's this event that I think if people really came out, they would see. or it would make a difference. So is there anything that pops out?
Definitely. Well, we have a great volunteer program, first of all. So if you're looking to get muddy, get out there, plant some oysters, plant some marsh grasses, that's a great way to do it. And I think just, really having people be educated and engaged, know about these issues so that they can become coastal stewards. People, a lot of times, especially in my role as advocate, people will call me up and say, hey, they're filling in wetlands at the end of my street. What do I do? And so just noticing things going on and speaking up. If it's just an email or a call, trying to, right some of the injustices that we see. Event-wise, we have a great oyster roast coming up.
Oh, there you go.
March 24th, Waterman's Brewing.
Oh.
And it's great. It's all you can eat oysters. They are fantastic. The crew over at Waterman's are just great people.
They're so great.
And it's a good way to come out and learn about the work and eat some delicious oysters.
All right, count me in for that one. That's not a hard sell over here. Yeah, and I think the takeaway, right, is it's kind of an age-old lesson, but like essentially, look, if you want to enjoy, the beach and enjoy all these things, right? It's a finite resource, and it's also one that like it's an investment to protect it, that you're going to see dividends, and your kids are locally. Sometimes I think with a lot of things that people attempt and initiatives, it's hard to taste, touch, and smell like a global issue, right?
Yep.
But this is right here, man. I mean, it's right, like you said, that mom swimming in the water, and you're over there with gloves. Could have used a heads up and might have appreciated a little bit more education. So it's kind of up to us to spread that education and not just you guys.
That stewardship, that ownership, that this is part of who we are. It's part of our community. And, I think that's the reason most of us are here. We are here because we have this beautiful coast. And if we don't take care of it, it won't be here forever. And I think in just remembering that we all have that role to play in protecting this resource, no matter, what your background is or what your skills are. And I think that kind of speaks to the primary tenet of the Coastal Federation, again, that the coast belongs to us all, and that every informed opinion matters when it comes to these decisions. When the organization formed in 1982, it was over the issue of peat mining. So a little bit farther north in the central part of the coast, they were planning to strip mine hundreds of thousands of acres of marsh to send out of the country. And what the Federation did a little bit different, they brought all of the traditional environmentalists to the table, but as well as the farmers, the fishermen, the businessmen, really brought everyone there, and they were successful at defeating this proposal and got national attention. And that's really how we've modeled our work ever since, is bringing everyone to the table so that we can come up with really long-lasting solutions.
What are the big goals we could close out on? What are you guys trying to do?
Well, we're cleaning some more water.
That's right.
Planting some more
Always
oysters.
Cleaning water.
Another program I'm really pumped about is our marine debris removal program.
Okay.
So this kicked off really after Hurricane Florence. And we realized there were just miles and miles of coastline where all of the individual residential docks and piers were missing. They were gone. And we thought, well, that debris, from the structure has to be somewhere, right? It doesn't fly away. And so we were funded by the legislature to hire local fishing crews. So these are commercial fishermen who know the water better than anyone, and especially needed the income after a storm event where the fish stocks weren't in great shape. And so we started hiring them to clean it up. We thought this would be great. We can get it all cleaned up. They started averaging 1 ton a day.
Oh, wow.
So 2,000 pounds a day. And these are crews of 3 or 4 guys on a skiff, by hand. And, a few years later, we topped 4 million pounds of debris and still going. And so we noticed that, again, 90% of it were from these residential docks and piers. And so we start talking to contractors, engineers, builders, and we know how to build a better dock that's not going to become marine debris after the next storm. But again, it's the exception, not the rule. So we convened a stakeholder group of all of the engineers, builders, contractors, regulators, wrote a riveting 400-page report. If you have trouble sleeping tonight, you can read it on our website.
Can I get it on audiobook, please?
But came up with these building standards. And so it includes everything from the floating docks, the foam inside floating docks, that we're now the first state in the country to require it to be encapsulated. That just happened with this legislative session. So nowhere else in the country has done this. to creating these building standards and trying to get docks back into the building code. So again, things you don't necessarily associate with coastal conservation.
Sure.
As a coastal geologist, I've learned more about marine construction than I never wanted to know. But again, if you have a dock, look these up and just, always thinking kind of outside the box, things that, what can I do? Everything kind of in your life, what impact is this having on the environment?
And, kind of to your point, it gets confusing for people, especially when you started talking about docks. And people are like, okay, NC Federation, and then CAMA. And it's like, no, wait, so
Yep.
Listen, can I get mad at you because I can only catch flounder for 2 weeks? See, that's not you. That's a whole other thing. That's fisheries.
We are not a regulatory agency. We just make recommendations.
I want to be able to gig 3,000 flounder a night.
As long as I can eat some of them.
That's right. I almost completely glazed over one of the things you guys do that visually everybody who's on the water can see. And that is your abandoned vessel removal, which is, those of us that have been around a long time will be like, look, and this is my civilian understanding of it, would be like, well, look, the Coast Guard says that's not their responsibility, and then wildlife says it's not their responsibility, and then that sailboat at Masonboro Island will just sit there for the next 5 years, and it makes for great photos, but...
It has been a nightmare. That was something, again, after Hurricane Florence, we were able to get funding and we were able to leverage the state funds. We got $2 million to remove all the vessels. We thought, great. Wrong. It took us 2 more years just to be able to change state law to allow anyone to have the authority to remove these vessels. 3 years after that, we're still working to get local governments the right authorities to be able to remove vessels and to fund it. So we've removed over 100 vessels to date with that funding, and we've been able to leverage that success to get more funding. Working with Wildlife Resources Commission and the Coast Guard and the contractors and the state partners and the Division of Coastal Management. It has been nothing short of a miracle. And so the other vessels that are still out there are on the list. We've received more funding. So as soon as that check clears, we have contractors lined up, ready to go. And then also with the contractors, we have to make sure that they're not further damaging the ecosystem removing these vessels.
Sure.
When they've been there for so long and they're in these sensitive habitats like marsh and reef, really making sure that they're done properly. There's some neat videos on our website of them removing the vessels that are worth a watch. But if you do see vessels that are abandoned or derelict, feel free to shoot us a message and we'll make sure that they're on the queue for removal. But I think there are 66 left at this point on the list.
Okay. Was some of the difficulty or the time have to do with, is it nautical law? Is that why?
Yes, and it kind of falls outside of everything.
Sure. Yeah.
And Brunswick County has a great program. City of Jacksonville has a great program. And so we're really trying to, get new ordinances into play and
There's
replicate
a model
it.
at least for you guys. You're
Exactly.
not starting from scratch. Okay.
So we're working with local governments to make sure they have the authority to do it, but as well as set up a program to sustain the funding to be able to do it when, these grants run out. We don't want to create a problem where, people start purposely abandoning their vessels, which happens.
Sure, yeah.
We want to
Scuttle.
make sure, yes, that, it's sustainable and that we're not creating a problem. If we draft a really great ordinance in one town, is there going to be a whole lot of boats, at the county line?
Wow. Yeah.
So
like
trying to think
unintended
through.
consequences.
Exactly. But we're really proud of what all of our partners have achieved on that, and still working on getting those last vessels out of the water.
Well, yeah, there you go. If you are on your boat and in the Intercoastal Waterway or out at Masonboro or any of these places, you certainly know what she's talking about and have probably wondered all about those boats. And it's pretty cool to know there's people out there working on it.
Trying to.
Baby steps. I just heard everything you said, and I'm like, man, I'm on board. I want to help my average attention span of a gnat human being go, okay, where can I go right now and have my voice heard? Or is there a link? Is there a click?
Definitely. You can always go to nccoast.org/stormwater. We have tons of resources on there. But just sending an email to any of your elected officials and saying, hey, what can we do to get better stormwater projects in our city or our town? Something just like that. And feel free to send them my email address and we can have a conversation about
This
it.
is her home number. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on. You're always welcome back if there's any other kind of initiatives or things you want to talk about. And yeah, man, have a happy holidays.
Excellent. I hope they are clamtastic.
Oh, she ends it with a bad clam joke. Do you know Stan? Water quality used to be.
Yes.
Okay. I figured Stan Sherman, man. Stan.
I have a whole slew of mollusk jokes, but I need a drink before I start going into all of them.
Clam jokes, mollusk jokes.
Yeah.
She's got a whole thing going, folks. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Times when you